Friends, it is that time in the year where we're going back and forth with weather. So I'm in Southeast Iowa, Zone 5B, and often I say April is kind of going to be the time, or maybe even late April, where we really start having kind of those warmer temperatures and I start cleaning up the beds. But you know what? Every year is different. And this is one of those years where we are warming up very early. So I am tackling kind of clearing out my beds early. Now, if you have followed for a while, you know some contention that I can cause is that I don't like to clean my beds out in the fall. I like to do it in the spring. There are overwintering great pollinators, beneficial insects, also winter protection for all of the perennials if you leave the debris. I get that that doesn't work for everyone, and that is okay. It's what works best for me. And what I'm going to show you today is what I do for really easy maintenance to get rid of all this debris. So if you remember, I have a big long bed here that I extended last year. It's going all the way down that way. And it's all easy care perennials. They're really drought tolerant perennials. Some of them are on the native scale. And they're really ones that I'm just going to mow off. I do this every year, and I think it's kind of fun to show. So I have it set pretty high, my mower, but let's go ahead and look at some of these perennials and talk about other ways they could be cleaned up too. So if you want to kind of see the difference here, the perennials that are looking tall are now going into their third season. The ones, you can kind of see the line right here, these were all planted then last year. So they're much smaller, much shorter. They don't need near as much cleanup because there just isn't as much of them. So if we come up this way though to the ones that are going into their third season, you can see there's lots of growth. So we have Caradonna salvias, we have Veronicas, we have some Rudbeckias, of course, Baptisia, a lot of Agastache, which you can see gets tall. So one thing, leaving this over the winter, you can see things like Rudbeckia. You know, these seed heads, birds will eat on, things like that. Now, if you're worried about reseeding, because Rudbeckia, it reseeds, which you can see right here. See all those little seedlings? Those could be transplanted, those could be moved however needed. I really, in this bed, I have really decided to kind of embrace the idea that these perennials are going to naturalize. You can see here too, the calumet. It's all just kind of reseeding down here and starting to grow, and I want that. I want all these perennials just to kind of grow into each other, really kind of expand, get bigger, and just kind of naturalize all over. If you want to control that, remove the seed heads. You can either do that right now, so you don't mow them over or cut them and kind of place those seeds all over. Look at all these seeds. So there's lots of seeds that are going to be in these. Or you can even cut just the seed heads off, you know, the fall before, prior if you want to, just to really kind of try to help it not expand too much. So one way we could go in and clean this up is what? We could go in just with a shears and we could trim it all up, kind of remove the debris. What I like to do is use a mower, because as you can see, a lot of this debris is going to be material that can just compost into the bed. So while we're starting to see now, we're getting really warm days. We were 80 degrees yesterday, which is abnormal, but it's very warm. That's waking everything up. But what you can see is the green material is starting to grow. I'm not worried if I cut a little bit. I do have some drip line in here for when the plants renew. Otherwise, I don't really need it anymore. I'm gonna set my mower high enough that I can just mow over the drip line. So just to tell you, that's gonna be, you know, I'm gonna set it like 3-4 inches. But all of this material is going to be great fodder just to compost back into the soil. So what I like the idea is every year I'm feeding the soil. The first year I did this bed, obviously I put in about a 2-inch layer or 3-inch layer of just a good hardwood mulch. And I like bark mulch, but the thing is, it, you know, the idea of it is it really should compost back into the soil. So I don't add mulch every year, and I'm hoping to really never add mulch again to this bed. What I want it to do is self-feed and self-compost year after year with all this debris. So it's going to compost back into the soil, eventually creating good organic matter. It's going to also help just kind of create a layer of what seems like a mulch on top of the bed, just to help suppress those weeds, retain the moisture, as with anything. But what I want to do now is go in and really start removing it. Now, I like to just kind of, I am someone that likes to work and kind of figure out gardening as I go. And every year I'll maybe try a different method. This mowing method I've done for multiple years now, and I love it in beds where it works. Obviously in certain beds it's not going to work. I planted this bed specifically knowing I was going to do this chop and drop method. What I could do is go in and cut everything down a little bit to make it easier. I'm going to try to do it without doing that. And you're going to kind of learn along with me. I did this last year actually, and it worked pretty well. So I'm just going to make sure my mower is set high enough that I can go over any drip line. And we're just gonna start going through and really seeing how it goes. I definitely wanna start by showing the mower. This is an old mower. Actually, I had it worked on a little bit last year because it's getting pretty old. The drive shaft, it doesn't have the self-propelling ability anymore, which is okay, because I really just want to be able to use it mostly for like these beds and stuff in the spring. I only do a little bit of trimming with it on a weekly basis during the summer. So I'm of course going to use some ear protection as I do anytime I mow with anything. But otherwise, it's a pretty standard walk behind mower. It doesn't self-propel. You could use one. Honestly, for beds, it's sometimes better not to have a self-propel just because then it's not going to get ahead of you, which I kind of like. And like you can see, I have it set up pretty high. So right now it's probably set up about 3 inches, maybe 4. I could check that for sure. And that's just to make sure I can get over any of those crowns of the plants. I'm not worried about going too low. All these perennials are gonna come back. Even if I chop some of their green off right now, they're gonna come back. What I will go through and do first is put all of that debris, some of it had spilled over onto the path itself. I'm going to put it back onto the bed, so when I go to do this, it will really chop it all up. And I don't really want the debris on the path, because you don't want to create anything that's going to create soil as much as you can on your path, because that will lead to weeds. Did I scare any of you away from this method? You know, when I'm done, and this is true if you even have a rock flower bed, which is kind of a separate point, but if you have river rock on something, blowing off the path, my gravel path, is essential. And I do this multiple times. I do this probably about once a week actually during the growing season, just from grass or any debris that falls into gravel or rock. It's going to eventually build up and create soil. It composts, you know, kind of with the rock. And eventually what that soil does is a great spot for weeds to grow. So obviously when I'm done here, what I just did was blow it off with my leaf blower. Now it does blow some rocks probably into the flower bed, or I know it does. You can maybe, there's certain ones I think are adjustable. Mine isn't. So if I have a few rocks in the flower bed, I'm okay with that. But let's really go in now and look kind of close up to see what that mower does. So I'll show you the pros and maybe what some could consider the cons. I don't really think there are any. The pros are, it really mulches. You saw all the debris on this bed. It really, so what I have on my mower is the self-mulcher on, meaning it doesn't blow it out the side. It traps it underneath and just keeps circulating it to mulch it into more of this kind of like fine mulch-like matter. Now this I'm using then as a ground covering, but also remember, when all these perennials grow, they get very big to the point where you never see the soil. So I'm really not too worried about how it looks on top. So the cons are, some people think this could be ugly to begin with, because I still have some sticks that didn't fully, because some of this gets pretty, as you can see, like even to break it up with my hand, that's pretty hard. So these get pretty sturdy. Sometimes I go in, pick up some of the larger ones. Sometimes I push them under those arborvitae back there. You know, really for me, the thing is, I just want this all to keep composting in. So you will be shocked that in probably only really a month, you're hardly going to see any soil, because all these are now getting really established, getting to their full grown size, that they are going to create a sea of green even before any blooms, where you don't see the soil. So you're living with a few weeks of seeing some sticks. And also remember, I do not mind if I mow off some of the green material as it was growing. So these are some Millennium Allium. You can see I mowed like probably down a little bit on the tips of them. That's fine. They're perennials. They're gonna come back with a vengeance, and they're gonna be just fine. For me, this method really comes from a place of wanting to have really big, beautiful borders of perennial beds, but also being one person and knowing I don't have the time or the ability, manpower, to just go in and have a lot of high maintenance things that I have to do by hand. So doing this where it took me 30, 40 minutes for, man, it's probably a couple hundred feet when you go all the way down to that end. and then all the way around, and it creates an L over to there. And it took me a matter of minutes as opposed to hours to do this. But now this is a great time too, by the way. If you want to put on a layer of compost, do it now. I'm not someone that really likes to synthetically fertilize anything. I like this self-mulching, self-composting idea, and also add my home compost when everything is like this, if I want to. I did want to show an example of a bed where I kind of have to do a hybrid version of this chop and drop. So this bed has lots of perennials. Again, it has, meadow sages. It has some, I think, salvias, some alliums, summer blooming alliums. But it also has some arborensis hydrangeas that I do pretty much cut down to the ground. And it has some boxwood, obviously, and some big arborvitae trees in it. It's more kind of a bed in the middle of the yard here that's more ornamental. Now, these are going to be so stocky, I don't try to run the mower over them. So this is when I do take a shears and I go in and I cut them all where I want them. So these are the Bar Harbor series. I'm not sure if they're still growing. Seaside Serenade, I believe they were called. I really like them. They can take the full sun really well for an arborensis, but I do chop them down to here. Now, all that leaf debris, I'm again someone that's going on the natural side of that, where I kind of leave it in here. Now, if it's too thick that I think it's going to suffocate plants, I'll remove it out to where I'm going to mow. But if it's in there, I'm okay with that. My thing is, gardening for me has been trial and error since I can remember. I grew up across the yard at the home place that I call it, where my mom lives. And Mom always let me experiment. Mom was always experimenting, and that's still what I'm doing. And as I learn methods that work better, that I'm able to achieve larger scale gardening, but hopefully with more minimal work, that's what works for me. So I understand that not everyone is going to find, the chop and drop method may be perfect for your yard. That's okay. I don't do it up around my house where I have more formal beds, a little bit more of that kind of foundational planting that I want it to look a little bit nicer year round. But I do it in all my exterior beds out in the yard where they sit all winter with the debris on them. And then come spring, I can go in quickly and do things like this. Here's the thing. I know that we all garden differently, and don't ever feel and I know some people aren't going to necessarily enjoy the way I do it here or want to do the same thing, but that's the beauty of gardening. We each do what works for us, whether it's because of our climate, because of our time commitments, whatever it is, and we find ways that work. And my thing is, I want to show you all of it. I want to show you the nitty gritty of all the gardening. You a lot of times will see me do tours and plantings when things are beautiful and green and blooming. I also want to show you right now, when everything's dormant, before it wakes up, and what I really do to help nurture my soil. That's what this is doing. It's helping compost, add organic matter back to the soil, really help nurture my plants. Leaving the debris on them over the winter is protecting them. It's great for pollinators, beneficial insects, but also what works for my time. So that's what this is all about. Maybe you can take bits and pieces. Obviously I have some more cleanup here to do. Some of that Joe Pye weed in the back I need to go in and cut down on my own. But then soon enough, I'll be showing you when everything's kind of coming up, looking full. I'm so excited to share some fun projects. I have, for a little teaser, a big planting project going on right over there for a big fun walkway. So that's all gonna be coming up, but until then, I'm gonna take this advantage of beautiful weather and keep cleaning up.